Before I get started, I wanted to give whoever's listening a little bit of insight on what this podcast is about. Almost everyone has gone through a breakup of some sort, whether that be a breakup with an ex-partner or an ex-friend. Breakups are obviously devastating and hard, but they shape us into the people that we are today. My hope for this podcast is to make you realize that you aren't alone when it comes to going through a breakup. You can get through it, and hopefully learn something from it at the end of the day. This is Obliterate Podcast. I'm your host, Christine Nikolic. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or feelings about me, my guest, or just the podcast in general, feel free to email me at obliteratepodcast@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at obliteratepodcast. My guest today is Sara. We met in the dorms our freshman year of college, and it was really nice getting the chance to talk to her. She's currently living in Indianapolis with her boyfriend and 2 cats. In this episode, Sara talks about her strenuous relationship with her father and why she is choosing to keep him at arm's length. This is Sara and the Estranged Father. Hi, Sara. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I was trying to think about the first time we met, and other than us meeting, like, in the dorms, I don't know if I have, like, a story, but, like, do you remember the first time we met other than that?
I think you were hanging out with Biz across the hall, but it was in the dorms, and I just remember thinking that you were, like, absolutely crazy and hilarious.
I forgot you lived right across from her.
Yeah, she was right across the hall, and it was a very interesting way to begin college, especially as a very naive person.
Yeah, you, like, didn't drink before college, right?
Yeah, I never drank, never did anything fun.
Yeah, I must have seemed like a crazy person because I was like, I'm so ready to get drunk, like, every day. And you roomed with Becca, right?
Yeah.
You guys are still, like, best friends, right?
Yeah, we're still best friends, still talk just about every day, and I still see her at least once a week from afar in her front yard.
Oh, that's so nice. And you're in Indianapolis now. You moved back, correct?
Yeah.
What was your time like in Chicago?
Just the best.
Oh, jeez.
It was fun. It's just incredibly expensive and incredibly cold, like 9 months of the year.
It is very cold. I give you props, though, for moving to Chicago and doing long distance with your boyfriend and just doing what you thought was right for you. I feel like a lot of people wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it was really fun for what it was, and I think that it forced me to grow up, and my boyfriend and I were doing the whole long distance thing, and we'd been together since we were like 22, 23, so it was kind of our way of growing into who we were supposed to be, kind of apart without really having to support the other in that time.
I didn't realize you guys have been together for that long.
Yeah, it's 7 years last month.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I feel old.
I mean, same. So, what are you doing now in Indianapolis? What are you guys up to?
So I just started a new job working for an insurance company. Well, I work for an ABA therapy company, and I get kids insured for ABA therapy. But other than that, just hanging out, waiting for the pandemic to hopefully end in the next 5 years.
Oh my gosh, it's so depressing. I don't even want to think about that. So who are you talking about today?
My dad is someone that I haven't spoken to in the past 5 years. We kind of reconciled a few weeks ago, but we still don't really talk that much and keep our distance.
Where does your dad live?
He lives in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
How far away is that from Indianapolis?
5.5, 6 hours.
Okay. Can you give like the backstory of your parents and like, because they got divorced at a young age, right?
So I was kind of the result of a one night stand after a Hall & Oates concert.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
It was pretty great. That's why my name's Sara, from Sarah Smile by Hall & Oates. Not creepy at all. My parents decided to give it a try, and they ended up getting married. I was like 3 when they got married. They waited until after my sister was born in 93 to get married. Then they abruptly divorced like a year later, and my dad remarried, I want to say 3 days after the divorce was final.
Oh man.
Yeah, so he married my stepmom, who I never got along with. And then when I left for college, they moved to Tennessee, and then they got a divorce. And now they're both separated on their own, living single lives. My mom is somewhere in Indiana, someone else that I don't really have a lot of connection with. There's a pattern, I guess.
So who did you live with when your parents got divorced?
I lived with my dad. He had full custody because my mom has a prescription drug problem.
And was that the reason why they got divorced?
They got divorced because they just never were in love. My dad said that he kind of had a habit of just finding women that he thought were good parents, and he never really loved them and just married them to take care of us.
That's interesting that that's like what he was looking for, was a good parent rather than like a good partner.
Yeah, I think it comes from his own childhood. He had a really great mom, but she was absent, and his dad was never there either. And so I think he wanted us to have a mom that would care because he didn't really know how to.
What was growing up like?
It was kind of rough. My dad worked at Chrysler in Kokomo. It's one of the only jobs that you can have and make money at in Kokomo. It's a factory. And his dad had worked at the factory and retired after 30 years, so it was just a way of life. A lot of people in our hometown work there. We were never really well-to-do. We were evicted pretty often. We never really had money. My idea of buying name brand was buying Kmart. So I had a lot of Joe Boxer clothes and thought that I was really cool. So it was just my dad and my stepmom and then my 3 younger sisters. And it was pretty boring, nothing exciting. We never really lived in a house that we owned. We never really had cars that we owned. We were kind of always ready to leave at a moment's notice.
So did you kind of travel the state, or were you in the same like city the whole time, or the same town the whole time, and just kind of like bounced around?
We lived in Indianapolis for a couple of years when I was in elementary school, and then we moved to Kokomo again. My 4th grade year, I went to 3 different schools because they couldn't decide where they wanted to go. So we lived in Kokomo between 4 or 5 houses in about 5 years.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That must have been really hard going to like different schools as well.
Yeah, I think that's where I kind of developed the need to be funny and use that as a crutch.
Did you live with, like, how long did you live with your dad for? Was it like all the way through college?
No, so when I left for college, the day before I left for college, my dad beat me up, and I decided then and there that I wouldn't go back, but the dorms closed for certain holidays and things, so I went back that Christmas, and then the following summer, I had to leave the dorm, so I got a job at Cedar Point, and then I went back to school, and I didn't go back for any more breaks. I would like go and stay with friends or house sit during holidays, and then they moved to Tennessee this summer after my sophomore year, and I didn't see him for 3 or 4 years. And then he just came up to see me in Indy for Christmas one year and ended up staying for 6 months. He just never left because he didn't have anywhere to go.
Oh my God, he lived with you?
Yeah, he lived on my couch. He didn't pay rent or anything. And then we ended up moving to another part of Indianapolis when our lease was up there. So we found him an apartment in the same complex, but it would be away from us so that we could have like our lives back. And then he ended up getting drunk one night, yelling at me, and then trying to fight my boyfriend. Yeah, that's when we stopped talking.
I mean, that makes sense. Was he abusive the whole, like your whole childhood, or was the time that he beat you up before college, was that the first time that something like that happened?
That was the first time that he'd been physical with me. He was physical with my stepmom, and then my stepmom was physical with me the entire time that she was married to my dad.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was less than stellar. So once I got out, I was excited to not go back.
Yeah, I bet. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
It's fine. I've been through about 17 years of therapy with it now.
That's good that you're seeing a therapist. I feel like that. I'm hoping that helps.
Yeah, it's helpful. I need the antidepressants and all of that jazz to fix all the stuff in my brain, and that helps as well.
Did you ever, I mean, did you ever talk to them about this? Like, did you ever talk to your dad about the abuse that your stepmom was doing to you?
So he knew about it. So he didn't want to deal with it. So he started working second shift at Chrysler so that he would leave for work when I got home from school. And by the time he was off of work, I was asleep in bed. So he kind of was able to avoid it until my teacher started complaining about it to CPS. And then they made us go to a therapist. And the therapist said that I would have to leave the home, and then we would switch to a new therapist and over until I left for college.
So this might be kind of a weird question to ask since you just told me like all of these horrible things that happened to you, but do you have any like favorite memories with your dad?
Yeah, so that's not too terribly weird because I think there's redeeming qualities for everyone.
I just feel weird asking after you telling me these things.
You're fine. My dad can be a good person. He is hilarious when he is okay, and when he's in a good mood, he's fun to be around, and he can tell, very good stories. So when I was younger, before he met my stepmom, I remember he was a lot more put together and would do fun stuff with us, like take us to the park, and he taught me how to swing a certain way so that I would spin. And I started playing basketball because of him. And so we would go to Purdue basketball games. And that was really fun for me because I thought that I was learning more about him and I could hopefully help him because he also had drug problems and alcoholism. So it was kind of, when he was good, he was good. When he was bad, he was very bad.
Did you and your siblings ever talk about like this stuff or ever like vent about this stuff or kind of ever think about calling the police or trying to call your grandma to live with her or anything like that?
I had a few therapists who said that I should go and live with my grandma, and my grandma was up for it, but my parents wouldn't allow that. I can't really explain why we didn't do anything about it other than my stepmom seemed to pick favorites every day. And if you were her favorite, then you were not going to say anything about anything because you weren't getting hit and you were getting to eat that day and you weren't bothered. If you brought anything up that would upset her, like my dad doing certain things, then it would kind of become an issue. So we just did everything we possibly could to not make her angry.
Were there days that she wasn't letting you have dinner?
I went from being very skinny to not being very skinny. And she would kind of limit our food intake. So, for example, there were 3 of us she didn't have my youngest sister until I was 16. So she wasn't eating real food at that point. But the 3 of us that were splitting food, we would have to split like a Totino's party pizza between the 3 of us. So, right. I think it was like maybe 200 calories each of food. So that kind of caused some issues with food and stability for me. And I kind of went the other way when I left for college. I got the like biggest meal plan on campus and went to town.
I mean, that makes sense. Like, you probably were just like happy to have meals every day. So did they help pay for college, or was that all on you?
So I was given a scholarship, the 21st Century Scholars Scholarship, from being so poor in 8th grade. And I just had to maintain my grades in college or in high school in order to get the full ride in college. So I had that, but then I also took out a bunch of loans for myself because I didn't know how money worked. I wish I could go to a high school classroom and be like, hey, so they're going to let you take out this much in loans your freshman year. Don't do it. If you can avoid it, don't do it. You don't need that Hollister hoodie. Just don't.
So true. So once you got to college, did you kind of like stop talking to your dad?
Yeah, he kind of went off the deep end. When he's sad, he lashes out, and he was apparently sad that I had left. So he would call me and say mean things. At the end of the first year there, so my freshman year, he was supposed to come and move me out of my dorm, and he was going to take my stuff and take it back home, and then I was going to go to Cedar Point to work for the summer. And he showed up very angry, started throwing things out the window in La Follette, started yelling at people, and threw all my stuff in the front of the building and then left. So I had to have one of my friends come over and help me take it, and then I stored it all in their garage for the summer.
Ugh. Yeah, he does not sound like a very nice man.
Yeah, it was hard because I saw a lot of people having like exciting times with their parents when they were coming to get them from their freshman year, and mine was just kind of being a butt.
How did you deal with all of this?
I kind of just shut down. To this day, I don't have a problem talking about these things because I kind of disassociate from it. I categorize my life in certain ways, and I put certain people in areas of my brain that I don't have to think about. And it had worked for a long time, up until I was sick this past year, and I couldn't get anyone to come and care about that because I couldn't trust them to come to the hospital.
Ugh. Like, your parents didn't come and visit you at the hospital or anything? They didn't check on you?
So I was in the hospital in January for a pulmonary embolism, and my mom wanted to come to the hospital, and my dad wanted to come to the hospital, but I hadn't spoken with either of them in years, so I didn't really want to deal with it while I was, stuck in a bed in the ICU. So my grandma called me and cried and said I was being a horrible person and I should let him come. But the last time I'd seen him, he physically attacked my boyfriend, my boyfriend was being an angel in the hospital taking care of everything, and he was there night and day. I didn't want to have to put him through that either. It's just one of those things where I've never trusted either of my parents in a hospital anyways because of their drug addiction problems. And I was given fentanyl when I was in the hospital, and I knew that if they were around, it wouldn't be safe.
Oh, wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. It was one of those things where I couldn't take medication when I was a kid because my parents would get into it or they would sell it. Like, I was on Ritalin for a while, and then my dad took it and sold it.
Oh my God, Sara. I'm so sorry you've had to deal with this your whole life.
It's much better now because I'm obviously an adult and I'm 30 and I get to choose who's in my life.
How did you end up letting your dad live with you for those 6 months after college? Like, how did that happen?
He said he was coming up for Christmas, and he did. And then he went back to Tennessee for a week, and he said he was going to come back and visit again. And then he came back and he had bags and just never left.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What was your boyfriend's reaction?
He wasn't into it, obviously.
Yeah.
But we're both too timid to say anything. So it just kind of went on for a while until he got into a fight with my boyfriend and then disappeared the next day.
What was that like having him just like live with you for 6 months?
It was uncomfortable because he is also verbally abusive in the sense that he's always said, that I could lose weight, how I did certain things, or what I would make, how I cleaned, what I would cook. So it was kind of just like being back in that horrible place as a kid again.
Yeah, I bet. And then how did you end up getting him to leave ultimately?
So we were moving because our lease was up, and we found an apartment complex that had 2 apartments open. And so we paid the security deposit for both of our apartments, and he had his own, and then we had our own. And that was okay, except that he would get mad if we went to dinner without him, or if we watched a movie without him. July of that year was when we moved into the apartments, and this was in 2015. And then by September, he was off the wall, just drinking and smoking all the time. And that's when he got into a fight with my boyfriend, and he moved out the next day. So September 15th was when that happened, and then he was gone the next day, and I didn't hear from him or anything for 2 years until my mom's mom passed away.
Wow. So did you all go to the funeral?
He was going to come to the funeral, and he drove all the way to Kokomo, and then my uncle told him to not come. He blew my phone up telling me how horrible of a person I was because I wouldn't let him come to the funeral, and he went on and on about all of the stuff that was going on, and I finally just like broke down and got mad and yelled at him, and then didn't talk to him until about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
I'm so sorry to hear about your grandma. That's really sad that she passed away.
Yeah, she lived a long life, so it wasn't too terribly bad, and she was kind of gone there towards the end, so.
It just is a bummer that he like made it about him.
That seems to be the thing that my mom and my dad both do. They're narcissists and tend to spin everything into something that's affecting them.
So you said that you talked to him like 3 weeks ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you deciding to talk to him again?
So my friend's dad passed away unexpectedly, and he just kept telling me about how much he wishes he would have talked to him more and reached out more and spent more time with him, that he regretted the time that they spent apart. And I felt bad because I am apparently too empathetic. And I asked my dad if he wanted to talk. So we ended up talking that day. And I've seen him twice since then because he had to go to Kokomo for something related to his dad. So I've seen him twice since then, and maybe texted 3 or 4 times, and that's about it.
And are you hoping to kind of have a relationship with him again?
I have a sister who's 14. So my sister who's 14 and my grandma, his mom, both live with him in Tennessee. So in order to have any type of relationship with them, I kind of have to have a relationship with him. I'd like to keep it pretty basic. I don't want to get deep with him. That's kind of where it gets to the point where he can hurt me again. And I think that's the reason I want to keep him at an arm's length. But I also don't want him to die and for me to feel guilty about it.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like it's your relationship to have, and you can do whatever you want with it, just as long as it's not like hurting you.
Right.
That's what's important.
It's a relationship on my terms, and that's what I kind of need it to be.
Yeah, I get that. So was it a hard relationship to get out of?
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those situations where you can forget about it for a time, and then something will pop up. Like you'll go to a wedding and the bride's dad will walk her down the aisle, and you realize that you'll never have that. Or Christmas time, you'll see something that you used to watch as a family and realize that you'll never have that again. So that kind of thing is when it was difficult. Knowing that I've never had that kind of family unit and that I'll probably never have it is when it's really difficult. But getting away from him was both difficult and incredibly easy because it kind of just made my life a lot easier, not having to worry about the verbal or physical harm that I would be in being around him.
Is it like a relief knowing that you don't have to have a relationship if you don't want to?
I really like knowing that I'm in control now and I can end it if I want to at any time, and knowing that I'm strong enough to not need that. So yeah, it's kind of liberating knowing that this is something on my terms and he can't take anything from me at this point.
Well, I hope you know how strong you actually are. Like, the fact that you went through all of this and are still like a nice and funny and good-hearted and kind person is pretty incredible, because a lot of people would have this completely break them. And to be honest, I would not have known that you dealt with this when I knew you in college. Like, you just seemed like such a happy human. But the fact that you were raised by two people that weren't the best and turned out the way you did is, I think, a amazing thing. What advice do you have to people that are going through the same thing that you did when you were growing up?
Basically just the old adage that it definitely gets better, and to look at what you're in currently and do the exact opposite of what your family has done, and you'll end up in an exact opposite situation.
How so?
My parents were in this mindset that they needed to numb the pain and to be with abusive people who didn't know how to treat them. And I actively didn't date in college and tried to do everything I possibly could to not get into drugs, and I don't drink that often. And I found someone that is incredibly kind and has never dealt with any of this kind of stuff, so they don't have their own baggage that they're bringing to the relationship and that we fight over. So it's an incredibly calm experience in my life now, and I don't have any of those fears of physical or mental abuse because I did the exact opposite of what they did.
That makes sense. And that's actually really good advice to just, like, if you have a bad upbringing, to kind of not follow those same bad patterns. Have you ever thought about telling your dad like all of this directly and just telling him like how much he hurt you and how much he affected you?
I think it would be wasted on him. I've talked to my grandma about it. I've talked to other people about it, but I don't think that he has the ability to empathize and understand what he did wrong. He's kind of the mindset that, I had a bad childhood. He had a bad childhood. What's the difference? I'm kind of trying to keep a surface level relationship with him, and I think that would kind of force us into a little bit deeper of a connection than I'm prepared to have also.
What do you think you learned from this relationship with him?
I've really learned that everyone is deserving of a better life. And if anything in your life is toxic, it's up to you to get rid of it. And there's no reason in keeping certain things or certain people in your life just because you feel like you owe it to them. I don't think that keeping a family member in your life is a thing that you have to do if they're doing certain things to you that make your life harder.
That's really true. Yeah. I mean, I feel like just because you're related to them does not mean that you have to have a relationship with them.
Right. They didn't do anything extra special to have me here other than, enjoy a Hall & Oates concert.
That's so true. How do you think the relationship with your dad shaped you as a person today?
I think that I'm a person that has a hard time trusting others, and I tend to assume that people are angry with me or that they're annoyed by me because I kind of grew up being told that over and over again and being mocked and made fun of for what I was interested in. So I kind of have this wall, and it's hard for me to tell people I love them or to let people get close to me.
Do you have any more advice for people that are like in abusive relationships and abusive households, and what they should do moving forward if they are able to do these things?
Yeah, basically, I just think of my life, and if I died tomorrow, would I be happy with where I am now? Wasting time with someone that you know you're never going to be able to talk to or have a future with is kind of wasting your life. And if you only get so many days on earth, why would you spend that time on someone that doesn't care about you? Especially if they're abusive.
That's very true. That's good advice. Yeah. What's your life like now, and your relationship with your boyfriend, and just your life in general? Like, what are you looking forward to in the next 6 months, 5 years?
My boyfriend was let go from his job in March because of the pandemic, and he worked at a car dealership as a person who like knew all the parts of a car, so he was able to like walk people through how to use certain things on the car when they were given the car. So he worked for a luxury brand, and there aren't many luxury brands in Indiana. So the plan is for him to move to California and to work at a dealership there that he has always dreamed of working at. And if he's able to make it there, then I'll move out there next summer. So that's our plan currently. But again, the pandemic might break everything.
That's exciting, though. Are you going to move to like LA or somewhere else in California?
It would be Orange County. So hopefully, with Seth Cohen, if I can.
Well, it's awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah. So if everything works out, that might happen, and it would be pretty cool. But other than that, we're good. Everything's just a little boring because of the pandemic.
Well, thank you so much for being so open with me and for talking about this serious subject. And I'm, again, sorry that you went through that, but I'm so glad that you're in a better place and you seem like you're doing well. And I'm glad for you.
Thanks. Sorry if it was a little heavy.
Oh, it's fine. Very cool. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I think the main takeaway I'd like everyone to have from this episode with Sara is that if you have someone toxic in your life, it's up to you to remove them. You deserve to have people in your life who support you, love you, and treat you with respect. If you need help getting out of a toxic relationship, reach out to the people who you trust the most to help you. You deserve happiness, and ultimately, if someone in your life is causing you pain, cutting them out is the best thing to do. Obliterate Podcast is produced by me, Christine Nikolic. Special thanks to Diala for providing the theme music. Please follow Obliterate Podcast on Instagram. And if you have any questions, feedback, or are interested in being a future guest, feel free to email me at obliteratepodcast@gmail.com. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share this podcast with your friends and family. And thanks so much for listening. My name's Christine Nikolic, and this is Obliterate Podcast.